10 years ago, a devoted wife and mother disappeared without a trace, her name slowly erased by silence and suspicion. Everyone moved on, except for the one person who needed answers the most. A forgotten photo and a cryptic note hidden in a rusted tin box would become the key to unraveling a decade of buried secrets. What she discovers will tear open the past and expose a truth no one was ever meant to uncover. Fair Hollow welcomed winter in its own peculiar way, quietly, somewhat reluctantly, but with no choice but to open its doors to the cold. Snow had been falling since the previous afternoon, laying a thick white blanket over the roof of St. Agnes Church, where the weak, yellowish light from the stained glass windows spilled out, like a sigh in the long, drawn-out night. Inside the silent church, the sound of prayers resonated steadily, almost in a whisper. The pastor, James Carter, sat alone before the altar. His dark gray cassock lay across his knees, his salt and pepper hair disheveled by the cold wind, despite the thin wool cap he wore. The sharpness of a middle-aged man was no longer in his eyes. Instead, they were weary, as if burdened by a prayer that could never be uttered. He closed the Bible, placing it on the old mahogany lectern, then stood up slowly, as if each movement were carefully considered. The empty rows of pews no longer bothered him. The congregation had thinned out after that year, the year Emily disappeared without a trace. No one said it aloud, but everyone understood that a pastor whose wife had mysteriously vanished was no longer someone they wanted to place their complete faith in. Outside, the wind swept through the cemetery beside the church, carrying the rustling of bare, leafless branches. On the snow-covered path, Lily Carter walked slowly. She was a slender 14-year-old, her face as delicate as her mother's, but her eyes were far more somber than her age suggested. In her hand, she carried an old leather wallet, the only thing left of Emily. Lily often carried it as a talisman. Inside, next to a broken button and a stained handkerchief, was a picture of her mother, her red hair gently curled, her smile tinged with sadness, standing beneath a row of cherry blossom trees. But, over the years, the photo had faded, the edges worn from being taken out and put back so many times. Lily looked at the picture as one listens to a wordless song. She couldn't remember her mother's voice. Only a few fragmented memories remained. A soft hand, the scent of gentle soap, a soft lullaby on stormy nights. She put the wallet back in her pocket, walking around to the back of the church where the Christmas decorations were stored. Even though hardly anyone came to the service anymore, she still wanted to hang the lights herself, to wipe the dust off the old wooden Christmas tree. She knew her father wouldn't say anything. He let her do everything as a form of silent healing. The storage room was dark and bitterly cold. Lily pulled out a lantern and noticed, beneath the dusty canvas tarp, a rusted tin box at the corner of the lid. There was no lock, no label. Faintly printed on the outside was Montgomery Biscuit Company, a brand of biscuits that had been discontinued long ago. Curious, she opened the box. There were no biscuits inside, only a strange photograph and a yellowed piece of paper folded in four. The photograph was a film print, black and white, with signs of slight burning on one corner. In the photo was a woman leaning against a brick wall, her face bruised, her lips cracked, one arm crudely bandaged. But strangely, the child she was holding was not Lily. The child had very large dark eyes and thick, curly hair, not at all like Lily. Lily picked up the piece of paper. The slanted handwriting was immediately recognizable, her mother's. She had seen it on old postcards, but the words on this piece of paper made her heart clench. If you are reading this, it means your father never told you the truth. And I have failed. Lily's hands trembled. She read the last line again and again, her mind spinning. She didn't understand everything, but a feeling clearer than any words began to ignite. Her father was hiding something. In the parsonage kitchen, James was heating water. The sound of the boiling kettle rang out steadily, but it couldn't drown out the thoughts in his head. From the frosted window frame, he saw Lily returning from the storage shed. She was clutching something tightly in her hand. She didn't come into the house immediately, but stood motionless in the yard, where snow fell gently like white ash. James knew that box was still there. He had hidden it many years ago, on that sleepless night, sitting before the letter Emily had left behind, but never sent. Those were the days he was torn between faith and truth, between morality and fear. He had chosen the easiest path, silence. But now he knew that silence could no longer protect Lily. That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She sat quietly on the windowsill, looking out at the white snow. The piece of paper her mother had left lay in her palm, heavy as a stone hidden in her heart. She looked over at her father's room. The door was ajar, a sliver of yellow light spilling out. She had always thought, as long as Dad was there, I'd be okay. But now, doubt had crept in like a cold wind through a crack in the door, and she knew there was no way she could sleep peacefully without finding out what her mother wanted her to know. Emily's old room was upstairs, at the end of the wooden hallway that had begun to warp with time. James hadn't been in there for many years, except to occasionally change the curtains or fix a window when winter arrived too early. The room seemed frozen in time along with the memories, preserving the faint scent of flower powder, the silver comb on the dressing table, and the hand-woven blanket still neatly folded at the foot of the bed. Lily gently pushed open the door. The wooden door creaked weakly, as if it too hesitated to open. She held the tin box to her chest, as if holding a part of her mother's soul, then gently placed it on the dressing table where the ring of a perfume bottle from years past still remained. The light from the ivory-colored nightstand lamp shone down, making the rusty box gleam in a reddish-brown, grimy color, no different from objects found in abandoned houses. She opened the lid once more. The photograph, the piece of paper with her mother's words, were still there, trembling like her own hands at this moment. Lily pulled out her laptop, placed it on the bed, her eyes glued to the photo where the wounded woman sat holding the child. She zoomed in on the photo, scanning each detail, the brick background behind them, the small name tag on the hospital gown the woman was wearing. Faintly, but still readable, St. Gertrude's Institute. She quickly searched Google, St. Gertrude's Mental Institute, Maine, closed in 2006. Images appeared, a Gothic-style building that had been sealed off, weeds growing up to the base of the walls, the broken window panes like haunting blind eyes. She read an old news article. Mental health facility once investigated for allegations of patient abuse. Internal records subsequently sealed. No Emily's name appeared. Nothing was certain. But intuition told Lily that her mother had been there, maybe as a patient, or maybe as someone who had tried to help someone and gotten caught up in it. The next afternoon, Lily went to the school library where her best friend, Ben Holloway, often sat fixing old printers and pretending to do homework. Ben was the type of person who didn't care about parties or football. He liked strange things, classical music, and had the ability to crack the Wi-Fi password of any house within a 5-mile radius. "You're saying your mom might have been locked up in a mental institution?" Ben asked, his eyes a little wider than usual, but his voice without a hint of mockery. "Not sure. I found this photo and a piece of paper," my mom wrote. "It seems like she knew something that no one dared to mention." Lily placed the photo on the table, lowering her voice. "I can't believe my dad hasn't said anything for 10 years. Ben didn't answer immediately. He looked at the photo for a long time, then nodded slightly. "Maybe I can find a floor plan and old employee records of this institute, but if your mom was really locked up there, who did it? And why your mom?" Lily bit her lip. She couldn't answer. She only knew one thing. Her father was involved. That evening, dinner between the two Carters was silent. The smell of pumpkin soup was light, but it couldn't drown out the heaviness in the air. James picked up a piece of bread, speaking slowly. "You didn't come to church this afternoon." "I was busy studying," Lily replied, not looking up. James nodded slightly. He looked at Lily intently, his eyes stopping at the slight scratch on her finger, probably from opening that old box. His eyes darkened slightly. "You're looking for something, aren't you?" he asked, gently but directly. "No." Lily shook her head so quickly that she herself realized her lie was clumsy. He didn't ask any further questions. He only quietly chewed on the piece of bread as if that silence was so familiar that he could live with it for the rest of his life. As night fell, Lily pulled the photo from under her pillow. She had hidden it separately. The box was under the bed. She looked at the woman in the photo, trying to match that bruised face with the gentle face in her 4-year-old memory. Was that Mom? What did Mom experience? And why didn't Dad save Mom? While dozing off from exhaustion, Lily dreamed of a long hallway. The lights flickered. The sound of wheels rolling on the tile floor echoed. At the end of the hallway was an iron door. From the crack in the door, she heard a voice, weak but clear. "Lily!" She walked over, pushed open the door, and saw a woman tied up, her mouth gagged with a white cloth. The woman's eyes were wide open, looking at her, full of tears. It was Mom. She woke up with a start, her whole body drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m. The next morning, as James prepared to light the fire, he opened the wooden box next to the fireplace, taking out some paper and dry wood. But then he froze when he saw the tin box lying there on its side. He pulled it out, clutching it in his hand. A moment later, he opened the lid. Still the same photo, the same piece of paper. He closed his eyes. His hand trembled slightly. Then he walked out to the backyard, where there was a steel trash can. No one saw him do it, except for Lily, from the upstairs window. She froze as she saw her father open the box, look inside for a long time, then throw it straight into the blazing fire. Lily jumped up, running down like a gust of wind. "Dad!" she shouted, but not fast enough. The fire had almost swallowed the entire tin box. Only thin flakes of metal remained, burning bright red. James turned around, standing still. "You don't need to dig this up. It's been 10 years. "But what about Mom?" Lily almost burst into tears. "We can't pretend she never existed." James looked at her for a long time. His eyes contained something unnamed, maybe fear, maybe regret. "It's not your business, Lily." That sentence, more than the fire, burned something in the girl's heart. She went up to her room, opened the secret closet. In the deepest corner, beneath some old books, was the photo she had kept. She had never put everything in the box. And now, she knew one thing for sure. Dad was hiding something. And she wouldn't stop until she found it. The snow hadn't melted from the last weekend's snowfall, and the road leading to the town of Hollow's Edge seemed to have been forgotten for decades. On both sides of the road were old pine trees shedding their leaves, covered in white snow, the wind whistling through the mountain pass in long bursts that sounded like prolonged cries. Ben inched the car slowly through the potholes, gripping the steering wheel more carefully than usual. The 15-year-old didn't have a driver's license, but he had enough skills to keep his uncle's old pickup truck from crashing into the fence or losing control on the ice. "Are you sure this place has people living in it?" Ben glanced at Lily, his voice half joking, half serious. "As sure as my dad is hiding something," Lily replied, her eyes fixed on the phone screen with the digital map zoomed in as far as it would go. Hollow's Edge used to be an internal residential area for St. Gertrude's hospital staff. When the hospital was still operating, people said there were nearly 200 families living in small, simple, and cold rows of pressed wood houses. Now, most of the place was just dilapidated house frames, rusty tin roofs, and windows that had been broken long ago. Only a few places still had flickering lights, lonely signs of the people who remained. After nearly an hour of searching, they found an old woman clearing snow in front of her porch. Her hair was gray-white, rolled into a large bun behind her neck, her cheeks red from the cold, but her eyes were sharp as if she could recognize strangers as soon as their car stopped. "The girl is asking about Sarah." The old woman raised her eyebrows, then smiled faintly. still alive, but living like a shadow. "Do you know where she is?" Lily asked, still holding the photo tightly in her coat pocket. The old woman didn't answer immediately. She pulled out a cigarette, lighting it. Smoke mixed with white breath rose in the cold. "She's at the end of the road, at the old bus stop, in that mobile home. But be careful, child. Sarah isn't like normal people." Lily glanced at Ben. They had heard that before. Not from the old woman, but from the piece of paper her mother had left in the tin box. In the corner of a diary page, Emily's handwriting was crooked between the lines. "Sarah Noland. If I disappear, find her. She knows." They didn't know who Sarah was, nor did they know why her mother trusted her. But in this dark hunt for the truth, that name was the first piece of the puzzle. "What do you mean?" Ben interjected. "What I mean is," the old woman said, her eyes looking into the distance, "Sarah survived in a place that used to swallow people's souls, and sometimes surviving is the scariest thing." Sarah's mobile home looked like it had been defeated by nature many times, but still stubbornly stood. The windows were covered with cardboard. Outside was a rusty iron bench with one leg broken, standing forlornly like a testament to time. Lily stepped onto the rickety porch, took a deep breath, then knocked on the door. There was no answer. She was about to knock again when the door creaked open, unlocked. The smell of mildew, ashes, and burnt grease immediately assaulted her senses. "Hello? Is anyone here?" Lily spoke, stepping inside. The dim light from a weak fluorescent lamp shone down, making the room seem distorted by darkness. On an old armchair, a woman was sitting, Sarah. Her hair was long, tangled like a clump of dead vines. Her body was small, emaciated, as if drained, but her eyes, deep and motionless, were wide open, as if looking through time itself. "Sarah Noland?" Lily asked softly. The woman didn't respond. She only stared at her hands as if they were both bloody and capable of glowing. Ben quietly retreated towards the door, leaving space for Lily. I'm Emily Carter's daughter," Lily said. Sarah's eyes flickered slightly. Lily pulled the photo from her coat pocket. She held it out, her fingers trembling. "I found this photo. It's my mom, right? It's you. Right?" Sarah tilted her head slightly. Her gaze stopped at the photo as if being pulled back from a heavy dream. A whisper escaped her mouth, dryly. "Emily." Lily held her breath. Sarah reached out, her thin fingers trembling as she touched the photo. "She saved me," she repeated, her voice a little clearer. "We were locked up together. Emily didn't deserve to be there." "Locked up? Where?" Lily asked urgently. "Why was my mom locked up?" Sarah shook her head, as if those questions were daggers stabbing her again. "They thought I was crazy. They knew I was pregnant, and they didn't want the baby to be born. Emily was a nurse, but she wasn't like the others. She secretly gave me food, gave me medicine, and helped me escape." Lily was almost speechless. "Then what happened?" Sarah turned her head. Her eyes went wild for a moment. Then a name burst out, as if from the deepest part of the earth. "Harold Carter." Both Lily and Ben froze. "He is the darkness, is the father of unrecorded deaths, is the one who turned that asylum into hell." Lily felt the blood in her body freeze. Harold Carter, James's father, her grandfather. She had never heard much about him. She only knew he was the previous pastor who died when she was little. Emily collected files, documents. She said she would expose everything. She promised she would come back for me, Sarah whispered, her eyes still glued to the photo. But then, she disappeared. They caught her. I heard screams from the basement. Then no one ever mentioned her again. Lily clenched her hands tightly. The cold seemed to no longer come from winter, but from inside, from somewhere in her chest, breaking open, leaking bit by bit the pain. Emily, her mother, had not disappeared for no reason. Her mother had fought. Her mother was someone who rescued others, and that made the loss even more painful. As they left the mobile home, it was already dusk. Ben walked behind Lily, still holding the car keys without saying a word. They were both silent. Seemingly neither dared to touch the thoughts in their minds. Lily glanced back one last time at the dilapidated wooden house, where a woman lived like a shadow because of the courage of another. And when she got into the car, she knew everything from now on would no longer be the same. Outside, snow was still falling in heavy flakes, sticking thickly to the stone steps leading into St. Agnes Church. The roof was soaked white under the golden light from the Christmas lights that Lily had hung with her own hands, each light flickering in the cold night, as if trying to retain some warmth before the old year went out. After the Christmas service, which was quieter than ever, the congregation left one by one, leaving the vast space with only the intermittent sound of footsteps echoing in the hall. James Carter stood alone in the sanctuary, where an old wedding photo of him and Emily was placed behind the faded wooden door. He looked at the photo as if facing himself from another life, the young man in a black suit, his smile shining beside his wife with radiant red hair. Emily always knew how to warm up a room with just a word, a glance. Now, all that was left was a picture, and a void that nothing could fill in his heart. The sound of a cane tapping in the hallway signaled that someone was coming. James didn't need to turn around to know it was Mrs. Mabel, the oldest neighbor in the neighborhood, and also the only one who had maintained friendly contact with him after the tragedy. "Remember the first Christmas after she went missing?" she asked, sitting down on the bench beside him. James didn't answer. She continued, "Little Lily was only 4 years old, curled up in your lap, not asking a single question. She didn't understand, but she could feel it." James clenched his hands. "I know." "And you think she hasn't known anything for the past 10 years? Her voice was low, not accusing but sharp as a razor. "She didn't ask because she was afraid of the answer. But now she's gone looking for it." He turned to her, his eyes blurred with tears. "I just wanted her to live in peace, not to be hurt." "James," she said, placing her thin hand on his, "it's the silence that hurts her." At the same time, in the basement of the church, which James rarely paid attention to, Lily was quietly pushing open the door leading into the storage room. She had seen her father go to the sanctuary with Mrs. Mabel and knew she had a short time to find what she had long suspected, what her mother had left behind that had never been mentioned. The flashlight on her phone swept across the filing cabinets. Nothing unusual, until she saw an unlocked drawer labeled with the faded words, "Correspondence Files, Personal." Inside was a stack of unsent letters, and among the mixed letters, she recognized the familiar handwriting, folded small, clipped together. To James, "If you are reading this," Lily swallowed, opening the letter. She read each word, her hand clenching. "I know you don't agree with me. I know you're afraid, and I don't blame you. But I can't stand by and watch what's happening at the hospital. I have to speak out. There are women being held illegally. There are even children. Harold, your father, he knows everything, and I believe he's behind it all. If I don't come back, tell Lily that I love her every single day." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. This was what Emily had left behind, a farewell, a warning, and a truth no one wanted to hear. Upstairs, Mrs. Mabel had just left, leaving James sitting alone between the yellow light cast from the Christmas tree. He sighed, and then, as if compelled by something unnamed, he entered the sanctuary, opened an old wooden cabinet, and pulled out a small, leather-covered box where he kept things he never wanted to see again. In the box was an old photo of an old man with white hair, Harold Carter, his father, in a black pastor's robe. Harold's eyes seemed to pierce through the person opposite him, carrying a sternness that James had never forgotten. When he was young, James idolized his father, but after he took over the church and also held the position of director of St. Gertrude's Hospital, everything changed. When Emily began asking questions, Harold summoned James to his office. His eyes were as cold as the first snow of the season. "Emily is going too far," Harold said. "You should hold her back, or let me do it." James had tried to argue, saying that if the mother of his child found something wrong, he had to listen, but Harold only smiled. "You won't let this church be lost because of your wife's madness, will you?" he said, then placed a thick envelope on the table. In it were James's financial records, the scholarship money he had once provided. "Why be foolish? You owe me too much to turn your back." And James had remained silent. That night, he saw Emily preparing to leave the house. She said she was only going for one night. But James had not held her back, nor had he stopped Harold when he left the church in the middle of the night, without giving a reason. That was the last time he saw his wife. Lily stood behind the door of the sanctuary, her mother's letter in hand, her heart clenching as she heard her father speak softly in the darkness, as if speaking only to himself. "I'm sorry, Emily. I knew, but I couldn't stop him. I was too weak." Her hand clenched. What she had suspected was now as clear as the church bells ringing in the night. Her father hadn't killed her mother, but he had let her go into a place she couldn't return from. She quietly turned away, tears not falling, not because she wasn't in pain, but because her heart was now empty. At the same time, James looked back at the wedding photo on the altar. The wind outside whistled strongly through the crack in the door, making the small candle almost go out. "I will fix this," he whispered, not knowing who he was talking to, "even if I have to face hell." And when he stood up, walking towards the church door, James Carter, the pastor who had remained silent for a decade, finally decided to face the sin called his father. He knew he couldn't save Emily in the past, but he could give Lily what Emily had fought to keep, the truth. And if that made him lose his role, his reputation, even his faith, so be it. James left the altar without hesitation. He went upstairs, where Lily still sat, her empty eyes looking out at the hazy snow outside the window. "Come with me," he said, his voice no longer hesitant. "There's something. It's time for you to know." Lily didn't ask. She only stood up, taking the old photo of her mother, the photo that had now become a compass for her every step. Snow fell quietly on the roof of St. Agnes Church, light as ash and thick as time. It was past midnight, but the lights still flickered from the basement, a place few had ever set foot in. James held the old bunch of keys, leading Lily through the freezing hallway, their footsteps echoing as if reverberating into memories that had never been spoken. Lily followed behind, silent, still clutching her mother's letter. She had read it a dozen times since last night. Every word now seemed engraved in her palm. She was no longer angry. That emotion had been replaced by something deeper, emptier, a longing to understand and a longing to forgive. James stopped before a door made of oak on the side of the church. The door had no nameplate, only a rusty lock that he himself had kept the key to for so many years. He inserted the key, opening it gently. "You've never been in here," Lily said, her voice low, not because of fear, but because of respect for the atmosphere that was weighing heavily between them. "It's been many years since I've come back here either," James replied softly. The room was cold and dark, the smell of old paper, lime walls, and mildew rushing out as soon as the door opened. On the shelves were wooden file boxes, recording the years in white chalk. A steel chest was placed in the corner of the room, large and heavy, covered in gray dust. James knelt down, opening the chest lid. His hands trembled but were decisive. Inside were sealed envelopes, copies of medical records, silent copies that told a story that had never been made public. "I've kept these all this time, without daring to send them anywhere," he said, his eyes not looking at Lily. "Because of fear, because of cowardice, because I didn't dare face what you needed to know." Lily sat down beside him, wrapping a thick coat around her legs, not interrupting. She let James begin in his own voice, not as a pastor but as a husband and a father. James slowly pulled out a file. The cover was named Emily Carter, scribbled in blue ink. That day, Mom and Dad had an argument. His voice was dry. Your mom had discovered something wrong at the hospital. Patients without records, women being held illegally, drugs being used without control, and Mom wanted to expose it. James clutched the file in his hand. Dad objected. Not because Dad didn't believe Mom, but because Dad knew if she went any further, no one would be able to protect her from your grandfather. Lily tilted her head slightly, her eyes following every word. Harold Carter, James said as if spitting out a hot coal, was a respected pastor to the people, but at home, he controlled everything with fear. He held the hospital, held the church, and Dad's whole life. Your mom knew that, but she didn't back down. James turned to his daughter, his eyes dark as if he hadn't slept in many years. That night, after the argument, your mom left, saying she would be back after meeting someone named Sarah, the one your mom helped escape from the hospital. Dad thought it was just an impulse like many times before. He bowed his head, sighing. But when Dad overheard a call from your grandfather's office, Dad knew she wasn't safe anymore. What call? Lily asked, her voice almost breaking. He was talking to someone at the institute. Dad doesn't know who, but he said clearly, Emily knows too much. Can't let her mess everything up. Then, just make it look like an accident. James won't dare open his mouth. The air in the room seemed to freeze. Lily could clearly hear the ticking of the second hand clock in the hallway. What did Dad do? She asked, slowly, not accusing. James turned away. He wiped his face with his hand as if trying to erase a stain that had been clinging to his skin for 10 years. Dad went to find him, threatened to tell. But your grandfather knew everything about Dad. The scholarship money, the mistakes of his youth, even the fact that Dad had secretly helped Emily get documents from the hospital. He said if Dad didn't remain silent, he would expose everything. And Dad chose to remain silent? Lily asked, not angry, just wanting to understand. James nodded. The next day, Emily disappeared. No one saw her again. The police questioned, journalists called, but no one found a clue. And your grandfather disappeared from public life a few months later, then died without explanation. Lily looked at her father. In that moment, he was no longer an adult, no longer a family pillar or a priest. He was just a broken man. Do you think Mom is dead? She asked. James swallowed. For the first time in 10 years, tears fell from his eyes. Not loudly, not noisily, just quietly like snow melting from roof tiles warmed by the light. Dad doesn't know, he whispered. But Dad didn't protect her. That's something Dad will carry for the rest of his life. Lily didn't say anything. She didn't hug him. Between them was a gap of 10 years and so much silence. But she put her hand on his shoulder, light as a snowflake. I will find Mom, she said, not demanding, not expecting her father to come along. Whether she's alive or not, I need to know the truth, so she won't be forgotten as just another victim. James raised his head, his eyes looking at his child as if seeing Emily again, determined, gentle, indomitable. I will help you, he said, his voice breaking. This time, I won't run anymore. The two Carters sat there until near dawn, among the files, the smell of old paper, and the tears that no one hid anymore. Outside, snow was still falling. But for the first time in 10 years, St. Agnes was no longer so cold. The hospital St. Gertrude's was now just a ruined stone block standing alone in the white, snowy forest. The skinny black trees around it like arms raised from the ground, screaming in silence. The roof tiles collapsed by patches. Window panes were boarded up from the inside, and the cracked facade like old scars on the face of time. Ben's truck stopped a distance from the main gate. The two children stepped down. Both were dressed warmly, wearing gloves, carrying a small backpack containing flashlights, knives, and copies of the records that James had given Lily. The sun had not risen, only the strange blue-gray light from the snow reflecting through the misty sky. "Looks like the set of a B-horror movie," Ben muttered, walking while shining the flashlight on the cracked wall. "Not a movie," Lily replied softly. "My mom was here." Ben said no more. They crept into the side gate, broken hinges, across the long corridor with broken bricks underfoot. The main corridor led to the office, where the management of administrative records. The room they entered first was still hanging sign, Patient Services. Both shone the light into the filing cabinet. Most were empty. Records were taken away or decomposed over the years. But in the corner of the room was a metal cabinet stuck. Ben used strength to pry. After a crack, the door popped open. A stack of dilapidated records was mixed with old newspapers. Lily flipped through each page. Eyes stopped when seeing familiar name. Emily Carter, registered nurse, resigned 2006. "Here it is," she softly called. Ben poked. "It says voluntarily resigned." "But my mom never said that. She did not leave. She was caught again." Behind was a sheet, thin and tarnished, printed sloping words almost unreadable. "Transfer notice. Sarah Noland and Emily Carter. See St. Gertrude's Ward, logbook." Lily looked at Ben, eyes lit up as finding a small flame in the night. "My mom was transferred with Sarah, remember? Sarah said Mom promised to come back to pick her up." "St. Gertrude's Ward?" Ben frowned. "I've never heard of an area like that." "It's a special area. My dad said it was blocked last, located in the basement." Ben glanced out into the hallway. "Then find the stairs." As they groped down to the basement, the iron stairs creaked eerily. The air here was thick with the smell of metal and mold. Flashlights lie an old brick wall, vents blocked by wire, doors welded closed with cross-iron sheet. At the last door in the hallway, they stopped. The door was painted red, peeling, on which the blurred words, St. Gertrude's Ward, restricted access. Ben pulled out pliers and knives. After a few minutes struggling, the rusty lock fell to the floor. The door opened into a dark room. Lily stepped in first. On the metal table was an old notebook, cracked leather cover smudged with dust. She flipped out, each handwritten crooked as written quickly. "Transfer list. Sarah Noland. Transferred inpatient indefinitely. Emily Carter. Moved back to the special facility. Classification code PN-17.706. Patient unnamed. Psych threat level 2. Lily tightened the notebook, eyes widened. "Mental danger?" Ben whispered. "They called your mom the unnamed patient?" "They erased her identity to hide. Turn a nurse into a mental patient, so that she no longer has value of speech." Lily's voice choked. A small noise sounded behind them, made both turned around. A lean figure, high, holding an oil lamp standing at the end of the hallway. "You shouldn't be here," he said. It was an old man in an old security jacket, baseball cap pulled low. Ben stepped back, but Lily kept calm. "Are you working here?" He shook his head. "I used to be a night watchman for this institute, when it was operating. I witnessed some things I should never see." "Do you know about Emily Carter?" Lily asked, taking a step. "And Sarah Noland?" The man stared at her, as weighing between true and false. Finally, he nodded slowly. "I saw a woman being taken here, in the middle of the night. No records, no nameplate. But she wasn't like the patients. White blouse, intelligent eyes. They kept her in a single room, not allowing anyone to contact her." "Was she taken away?" Lily asked quickly. The old man hesitated, then took from his pocket a piece of old paper. On it was a handwritten address, the last line still with ink. "The Pines Facility, off-record site, Northern Maine. Special facility," he said. "Only receive internal people. No one else knows." Lily took the paper, Her eyes lit up as there was an escape. "Thank you." The man nodded slightly, then turned away, not forgetting to leave the message. "Remember to be careful." When stepping out, the sun had risen above the pine, casting the light early cold days on the roof of the ruined hospital. Snow was quiet on the roof tiles, no signs of melting. Ben put his hand into his pocket, muttering, "Do you think your mom may still be alive?" Lily looked at the address, then looked up at the gray sky. "I don't know," she replied, "but for the first time in 10 years, I have a place to go to." And when they returned to the car, the old door of the hospital behind closed with a bang, as if that place had just finished telling a part of his story. Route 9 extending to the border Maine as a cut through the deep forest. James drove, hands clutching the wheel, though the road Route 9 stretched all the way to the Maine border like a gash through the deep forest. James drove, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly, even though the road wasn't busy at all. Outside the car window, the old pine forest was covered in thick fog, the trees standing perfectly still as if guarding the secrets of a time that had died. Lily sat in the back seat, next to Ben. Inside her was the hand-drawn map marking the address. The Pines facility, a nursing facility not listed on official maps, but mentioned in Emily's transfer records. She hadn't eaten anything since morning. Her stomach was empty, but her heart was beating so fast it was choking her. James hadn't said anything the entire trip. But for the first time, he was present, not running away, not hiding. The car turned onto a gravel road, passing through a small checkpoint with a sign that read, "Private Medical Property, No Entry." Before them, hidden in the forest, was a low-rise complex that looked like a high-end nursing home. The walls were clean white, the windows were large, and the grass was neatly trimmed. Everything was too perfect, too artificial. James stopped the car. A man in a security uniform stepped out of the glass booth, his hand on his belt where a walkie-talkie was hanging. "What do you need?" His voice was cold, his eyes assessing everyone in the car. James lowered the window. "I'm James Carter. I believe my wife, Emily Carter, is being held here." "We do not provide information about patients," the guard responded mechanically. "This is a facility for internal cases only. Without legal guardianship papers or a court order, please leave." "She's my mother," Lily interjected, her voice trembling. "We have proof. She was brought here against her will. I am not authorized to discuss any information." The guard stepped back, preventing the car from entering. James gritted his teeth, about to get out of the car, but Lily grabbed his hand. "Not now. Let me." That night, when the moon rose, Lily and Ben returned. James stayed in a nearby town, playing the role of a distraction if needed. The two kids slipped through an old chain-link fence behind the nursing home, where it bordered the forest and had fewer cameras. Ben used a wire cutter. Lily put on gloves, crawled along a drainage ditch, slithering through the layer of fallen leaves and damp soil. They pushed open an old back kitchen door, which was only secured with a rodent-proof latch. Inside, it was pitch black. The smell of disinfectant mixed with the smell of damp paper and something colder, like fear that had lived there for too long. The two followed the hallway, the flashlight on their phones turned down as low as possible. The doors were painted white, numbered. Some patients were sleeping. They passed without anyone waking up. Only an old man in the last room, his eyes wide open and unblinking as they passed. At the end of the hallway was a steel door with the words, "Secure Ward, Level 2. Ben pulled out a fake magnetic card that he had made himself, learned from RFID hacking videos. It wasn't a sure thing, but the door beeped, then opened slightly. Behind it was a row of small rooms, the glass doors foggy, unnamed. Lily looked at each room. The glaring white light inside made everything seem unreal. Until she stopped at the 6th room. The woman was sitting on the bed, her back to the door. Her hair was as silver as frost, long to her waist. The beige patient gown was baggy. On the table was an undrunk glass of water and a stack of blank papers with scribbled drawings of children holding hands. No name, nothing to identify her. But Lily knew. She didn't clearly remember her mother's face at the age of 4. The old photos were blurred by the years, but the things that couldn't fade were the things not in memory, but inside her. The way the woman sat, tilted her head, the way her hands rested lightly on her thighs, as if listening to the whole world through the silence. And above all, the drawing. Children holding hands, an image she had seen her mother draw in an old notebook, now reappearing, exactly the same. Lily put her hand on the glass. "Mom?" she whispered. The woman turned her head. The light cast down half her face. Under the silver hair, a pair of eyes appeared, distant, confused, then slowly widened. "Lily?" Her voice was hoarse, like ice melting after 10 winters. The girl couldn't help herself. She pushed the door open. It wasn't locked. She ran over, knelt down, and hugged her mother. The woman's body trembled, her hand gently touching her daughter's shoulder as if not believing it was real. "It's Mom, right? It's really Mom," Lily choked. Emily didn't say any more words. She just cried. Tears flowed silently down her wrinkled cheeks, blending into her daughter's hair, the hair she used to brush every night before sleep, used to kiss her forehead in the early years of her life. Ben stood at the door, turned away, trying to give the mother and daughter their own moment. He knew they couldn't stay long. "We have to go," he said softly. But Emily shook her head weakly. "They won't let me leave. They say I'm crazy. They have papers." "We have proof that you're not a patient," Lily said, wiping her tears. "You're not crazy. They did that to silence you." Emily looked at her daughter. For the first time, she saw her mother's eyes really come back, alert, bright, like a fire that had never completely gone out. "I still remember you," she whispered. "For the past 10 years. In my head, there was only one word, Lily. And in that moment, time seemed to no longer exist. Only the mother, who had survived hell, and the daughter, who had found half of her soul again." Footsteps echoed from the far hallway. Flashlights turned on. Ben called out quickly, "Someone's coming!" Lily hugged her mother tightly one last time, promising to return. "I'll get you out of here, I swear." Then they backed out of the room, fading into the darkness, their hearts pounding and their chests still tight. No longer with fear, but with hope. A real hope. For the first time after 10 years that seemed to have died. Emily Carter sat in the wicker chair placed next to the window of a small room at a motel on the outskirts of Damariscotta, Maine. The window was slightly ajar, letting in the spring breeze, carrying the scent of pine and the salty air from the nearby lake. The gentle afternoon sun touched her pale skin that hadn't known freedom for nearly a decade. Lily sat beside her, her hand never leaving her mother's, while James stood quietly in the corner of the room, his hands clasped in front of him, not daring to sit, nor daring to look directly at Emily. He was like a soldier returning from the battlefield, not because of victory, but because he had survived to witness the aftermath. Emily looked out for a long time. Her eyes still had something vague, not because of insanity, but as if her mind had just surfaced from the depths of a forced sleep. "You've grown so much," she said softly, her fingers stroking Lily's hair. Lily squeezed her mother's hand tighter, not crying. She was past the stage of tears. Now was the time to understand. "Mom," she said, "how did it all start?" Emily took a deep breath. Her voice was slow, even, but each sentence was like pulling out an old, unhealed wound. "Back then, I worked as a nurse in the women's neuropsychiatric unit. One day, I started to notice that there were patients without names, no records, no relatives who came to visit. They just stayed silent, listless, as if they had been erased from society." She paused, swallowing. "Then I met Sarah. She used to be a teacher, admitted to the hospital after accusing her husband of abusing her daughter, diagnosed with delusional disorder, held indefinitely. James was silent. What Emily said completely confirmed the records Lily and he had followed. I started taking notes, Emily continued. At first it was just names, expressions, then later it was drug samples, treatment schedules, and signs that they were being tested with unregistered drugs. That drug caused hallucinations, loss of resistance. I knew what to do. You intended to bring it to light? Ben, now sitting quietly in the kitchen, stepped closer, asked. Emily nodded. I gave the documents to an anonymous journalist, but someone found out. I think it was Harold, James's father. James now stood up straight, his eyes still glued to the wooden floor. He knew about it from before, Emily said, her voice cold. He was a member of the hospital's board of directors. He was a pastor, so he was trusted. People thought he brought faith, but he brought influence, power, and the town's trust was the perfect cover. Did you have proof? Lily asked. Emily slowly opened the pocket of her coat, the old coat that James had kept for 10 years, and pulled out a piece of paper folded in 4. The paper was yellowed but clear, a copy of the experimental drug sample, with Harold Carter's name in the signature section. I hid it in the lining of my coat before I was caught, but they never found it, because I was transferred first. Lily opened the paper, her eyes widening. James squeezed his eyes shut. He didn't just know, he was behind it all. Emily paused, then turned to James. And you knew that? James took a step. I knew, but Silence, Emily said, not angrily, just sadly. You stood there and did nothing. He didn't argue. He only bowed his head, as if the coat on his shoulders was getting heavier with each passing pound. I don't blame you, Emily said softly, almost whispering. You lived your whole life in his shadow. I saw that. I just regret that you didn't dare step out when I needed you most. James knelt down in front of her. His face, once accustomed to the calm demeanor of a pastor, was now just a collapsing mess. I'm sorry, Emily. Every night, I think about you, about our child, about the things I didn't do. I don't deserve your forgiveness. Emily didn't say anything. She looked at Lily, the daughter who had gone through a journey longer than her age, then turned to look at James. You couldn't save me, but you raised our child, taught her to distinguish right from wrong, taught her to stand up. No one else could have done that. Emily reached out her hand. James looked up, his eyes aged by the burden, then put his hand in hers. The silence lasted, but it wasn't the silence of lies, but the silence of healing. As night fell, Lily stepped out onto the balcony, leaving the 2 adults with their own space. Ben stood on the railing, holding a cold cup of cocoa. He didn't say anything, just glanced at her with a familiar look. Are you okay? He asked. Lily nodded. Not really, but I think this is the beginning. Ben smiled. You found your mom. Yeah, but now is the hardest part. What part? Helping her believe that she's still herself, not just a victim. Ben turned to look at her seriously. You have me, and your dad, and your mom too. You don't need to do it alone. Lily looked up at the night sky. For the first time, she saw the stars. The main forest seemed cold, but it wasn't lonely at all. In a place that was once the end of the line, a family had found each other again, not whole, but sincere. Evening at St. Agnes had never been so quiet. The church, which still lit every Sunday, was now open on a Friday. No ceremony, no bells. But the pews were full. Rumors spread fast as wind. Pastor James Carter will resign, and he wants to tell the truth. No one knew exactly why. Some whispered about a wife returning. Others said he had discovered the crimes of his father. But whatever, they came, not for curiosity, but for a desire to understand. Lily sat front row. Ben was next to her, hand not leaving the camera. They wanted evidence but not forcing James to do anything beyond what he had chosen. The side door opened. James stepped on the pulpit. No robes, no Bible in hand, just a man in a dark sweater, face tired but determined. He looked down at the community, the place that had been attached 20 years of his life, where he had performed the wedding, baptized children, and read scripture to send the old to earth. His voice sounded low and clear. No need for a microphone. I am James Carter. 10 years ago, I lost my wife. A pause. No one stirred. And I lied to you. He took a deep breath. I told people that Emily was missing, that we did not know what happened, that I have done everything to find her. But the truth is, I know. The murmur arose, then sank like a tide is compressed. My father, Harold Carter, is a person that this town had revered. But he was also the one who abused his power at St. Gertrude's Hospital to hide the wrongs. He approved drug tests on patients without consent. He has turned some people, including women and children, into experimental under the guise of treatment. All eyes turned to James. No one was breathing hard. And my wife, Emily, had discovered that. She collected evidence. She intended to publish with the press. But before she could do that, she was illegally detained, has been assigned a mental patient, been taken away, and disappeared from my life, my daughters, the ladies. James stopped, his hand placed on his chest as to keep the heart from exploding. Lily swallowed. James looked at his child, Lily's brown eyes like Emily's strangely. But at this time, her eyes did not blame him, only quietly take. I am afraid, I cowered. I chose to silence, to protect the reputation, position, church. And I have traded the most important thing, the truth. He bowed. I did not come here to beg for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I'm no longer worthy to stand here, teaching the Bible while I myself do not live up to the first commandment. Thou shalt not bear false witness. James put a stack of records on the pulpit, copies of evidence that Lily and Emily collected, along with a certificate releasing Emily from the main hospital. This is the truth, is evidence, and is why I will never be a pastor again. Silence. Then, the door behind the church opened. Emily stepped in. She wore a cream-colored sweater, her silver hair neatly tied back. She was still thin, slow form, but each step was proud as if she had never been imprisoned for a decade. James stopped. He did not know she would come. Emily walked on the pulpit, placing her hand on his shoulder. James, she said softly, enough for everyone to hear. You do not need to be a pastor, because tonight you are the pastor in the truest sense. The whole church was stunned. James looked at her, for the first time not with guilt, but gratitude. Emily turned to the community. I am Emily Carter. I have returned. Then she bowed. I used to be in jail. I used to be forced to silence. But today, I'm not afraid anymore. Next to her, Lily stepped on the pulpit. 3 people stood next to each other, the father, the mother, the child, like a painting torn now connected, each stitch full of pain, but still one. No one said anything. A minute, then 2. Until Mrs. Mabel, the oldest congregation, leaning on his cane forward. She put her hand on James's shoulder, said nothing, then another, Mr. Plummer, then the elementary school teacher, then people that James had married had prayed for them. Each hand placed on his shoulder, not to affirm that the mistake had disappeared, but to say that, we are here, we have heard, and we choose to stand by the truth. That night, the church St. Agnes, no candles on the altar, no solemn ceremony, no sermon. But between the electrical room, there is a candle was lit, from Lily's hand, handed to her mother, then to her father. Small fire, simple, but enough to illuminate even the darkness lasted 10 years, a drop of candle, as a promise. The truth, once spoken, will never be alone. The small town Vermont sunk in the autumn colors. Yellow leaves covered the roof tiles, the stone path leading to the back of the old church. Gentle wind swept through the red maple arches, carrying the smell of damp earth, the smell of wood, and hints of somewhere. The smell of apple pie, new baked. Emily, kneeling beside the flower beds behind the garden, her hands, still trembling slightly because of the years of imprisonment, now carefully planted soil around the sunflower root early in the season. She worked in silence, not because of gloomy, but because each movement is a thank you for freedom. Across the fence, James was sitting with a group of young children, the book open on his lap. His voice was warm, telling the story of courage, not the great heroes, but the people who know to apologize at the right time. Lily, standing at the window on the second floor, looking down, hand still holding the blue ballpoint pen, was almost running out of ink. Before her was a thick notebook, dark red leather cover. Not a diary, not really a draft. It is the story of her mother. Ben quietly put a cup of hot cocoa next, then sat down opposite the wooden chair. The old library of the church has been transformed into a separate office, Lily. Low ceiling, walls covered books, and angle also have light. You almost done yet? Ben asked softly, not wanting to break the air. Lily nodded, eyes not leaving the last page. Under the uniform lines is the end that she only wrote a few minutes ago. No editing, no calculation. Mom did not disappear. Mom did not run away. Mom was buried, under the silence, under the fear, and under a system too good to hide. But Mom never disappeared in me, and now Mom was seen, has been called the right name. This is the story of her mother, but also the story of all those who have disappeared in silence. I love you, Mom, and I will continue to write. She dot pen, wait for the ink to dry, then gently closed the books again. A light breeze blew through the open window, making her hair flying lightly. The smell of cinnamon from the kitchen flew up. Emily may be baking something new. Each day, she learned a little one. How to make cakes, how to cut the grass, how to walk in the street without bowing. Ben looked at Lily. You will send out? No, she smiled. I'll keep, at least the first version. Who do you think will read? Maybe it's my child, maybe it's someone far away. But more important, my mom has read, although not with eyes, but with the heart. Ben silent. He understood. Under the yard, Emily stood up, dusted her hands, then looked up at the window on the second floor. Lily raised the book, smiling. Emily smiled back, the smile no longer tinged with sadness, but with a peaceful that have been found after the storm. The church bells suddenly rang, not the bell prayer, but the bell time normal, regular. A bell as any other day, but with the Carter family, that is the first day of the new part of life. No one had to hide in the dark. No one was hidden in the records, no longer whispered behind. There are only 3 people, mother, father, and daughter, are living in a small house where the window opens the red maple arches, where the afternoon echoed laughter children and rustling paper in the writer's hand. Lily stepped out onto the porch. In her hand was the final letter, written specifically for her mother. Dear Mom, I do not write to retell the past, but to thank you for surviving. Mom is proof that the truth can be buried, but never lost. Mom is the reason I believe in the pen. If anyone asks me, how did this story end? I'll smile and say, it does not end. It continues, through each morning wake, each meal at the wooden table, and each time Mom called my name without trembling voice. Thank you, Mom, for still being here, for not giving up. Love you, Lily. She folded the letter, did not put in an envelope, but put it on the table next to the photo frame, took 3 of them, the first after 10 years. Behind is the sunflower trellis, and Emily is holding hands Lily, and James laughed. Laugh real, not forced. Lily stepped down porch, enter into her mother's arms. Autumn sun falls gently, and the past, though cannot delete, also stopped chasing them. It becomes what they look back, not to cry, but to know how far they've gone. A chapter closes, and life, finally, begins.